You talked about having Popovich, and you said that experience was a major difference here in Game 1, Antonio. What did you mean by that?
Well, you sit there, and Greg Popovich is going to have a plan from A to Z on how to attack this team offensively, how to stop them defensively. And I'm not surprised. I'm a little bit surprised at the margin of victory, but I'm not surprised that they won this game. You figure if you don't have that experience, you don't know what to expect, you're going to get sucker punched. And that's what Memphis did. They got sucker punched. Now they have to go back, watch film, regroup, tighten up their defensive rotations, not give up so many threes. Once they do that, they have a chance to get up and down the floor a little bit more. Things loosen up. Zach Randolph started getting some post-ups, and then things change.
Most coaches would have called a timeout when the Grizzlies cut it down to 6, as Greg Popovich did. But the minute he did that, he made the use of that timeout, and things changed everything from that point forward. What does that say about him as a coach?
Oh, I think what it says is that his players are just, hey, I'm all in. Whatever you tell us to do, we're going to do. You've led us to the promised land so many times. The little things are going to be the difference between us winning and being champions and us going home. So we're going to follow that script to a T. I think they just have such great rapport right now that no matter what, he calls timeout and say, hey, you need to dive on the floor right now. I think all the guys are dive on the floor.
We know San Antonio is a team, Antonio, that likes to play from the outside in. Kick it down low, open things up along the perimeter. And we saw that play out in Game 1. They were 14 of 29 from three-point range in Game 1. Why couldn't Memphis defend the perimeter?
The one thing that I kept seeing time and time again, every time that there's a drive to the basket, especially off a pick and roll, you're supposed to know who's coming. Two guys were coming a lot of times. Once you get two guys trying to stop the paint, your defensive rotations is just not going to work. Somebody's going to end up wide open. Why are you faking at Matt Bonner? That's all he does, run him off the three-point line. There's a lot of corrections that they're going to have to make in their defensive rotations. I don't think San Antonio wants to take 33-pointers, but if you're going to give them, they're definitely going to shoot them.
Is it surprising that these two teams, who know each other fairly well, met 4 times during the regular season, and Memphis they know what San Antonio wants to play? Were you surprised that they were ill-prepared like they were here in Game 1?
A little bit. I expected them to realize that, hey, we have to keep Tony Parker out of the paint. We have to defend their pick and roll a little bit better. I saw they try to make little adjustments here and there, but it's not going to work if you're not going to establish that low post game. I figured that Marc Gasol and Zach Randolph were going to be key to this series. And as we can see, when they don't score, they have a tough time in their half-court offense.
The Spurs shoot 53% from the field in Game 1, 48% on threes. And going back to Game 6 against Golden State, when they had 27 assists on 33 made field goals, 28 assists on 40 made field goals here in Game 1. But, Bones, the Memphis Grizzlies have been resilient throughout the playoffs. They lose the first 2 games to the Clippers, run off the next 4. They lose Game 1 to OKC and run off the next 4. So what's their mindset going into Game 2? Is it we've been here before, we've done this before?
It is, Rick, but the difference between that and the Western Conference Finals is that the team that you're playing has more figured out than the teams that you've beaten and eliminated from playoff contention. I mean, the San Antonio Spurs are a team that has a lot of fuel in terms of what it is that the Memphis Grizzlies bring to the table. Lost to them 2 years ago as the #1 seed. They like to avenge some of that. Last year having a 2-game lead against the Oklahoma City Thunder and then losing 4 straight. So the Spurs, I think, have laser focus. And if you listen to Tony Parker after the game talking about we didn't do anything, we just won Game 1, but we're not happy about it. We got to make sure that we're ready for Tuesday night and try to get a 2-0 lead in this series and respect the opponent.
Yeah, it is. I mean, even though they won by a lot, I'm with Brent. They have to stay focused because this is a dangerous team, the Memphis Grizzlies. When you're the road team, you want to come in and get one. You didn't get one the first one, but you want to come in Game 2. If you can steal this one, then we have a whole different conversation on this table. But the San Antonio Spurs experience, you go in and win that one, you feel kind of shaky if you're the Memphis Grizzlies because you know this veteran team with all this talent can come in and get one in Memphis.
Do you agree with Pau Gasol that Game 2 is going to look a whole lot different than Game 1?
Memphis, they would love for it to look totally different, but I think if you're the Spurs and everybody's been in basketball a long time, it is going to look different. Yes, Zach Randolph's going to probably score some more points. Can the Spurs keep knocking down threes at this pace and this rate? Probably not, but it's going to be a high dosage of pick and roll, and they're going to have to defend that from Tony Parker getting into the lane.
So let's look at the series schedule for the Western Conference Finals. Game 2, Tuesday in San Antonio, 9 Eastern on ESPN. Games 3 and 4 from Memphis, Saturday, and then May 27th, also at 9, also on ESPN.
It's Game 1 of the Western Conference Finals. Zach Randolph and the Grizzlies getting the challenge of Tony Parker and the Spurs. First quarter, it's Randolph struggling off the dribble, blocked by Tim Duncan. Later, Randolph forcing the runner and getting nothing. He hit just 1 of 8 shots. San Antonio outscored him 31-14 in that opening quarter. Later in the second, Parker going coast to coast, had the Spurs up 18. Mike Conley then finds Randolph and Zebo. It was a frustrating day all afternoon, had just 2 points. Later in the second, Parker finding Kawhi Leonard for the corner 3. He gave him 18 and had the home team up 15. Tim Duncan then gives it up for Danny Green, who has the touch from downtown. The Spurs had the deep ball touch all afternoon. Thiago Splitter, the kick out for Green, another tray. The lead was at 16. Then it's Manu Ginobili connecting from downtown. Spurs up 9. Later in the third, Matt Bonner. One of his 4 threes on the day. He had a dozen points, had the Spurs up 13. Fourth quarter, shot clock winding down, and Parker taking care of business right down the lane. He scored 20, and it's the Spurs that coast in Game 1, 105-83.